What's up, Cartmasters? Nightside back with a hands-on look at Omega Force and Koei Tecmo's Dynasty Warriors Origins, which releases on January 17th, 2025. This is the newest iteration in the Warriors franchise with a 7-year gap since Dynasty Warriors 9's release. In today's video, I'm going to talk about some of the things that are new to this game and what my general thoughts about Origins is after roughly 20 hours of playing the game. There will be some light spoilers covered in this preview, but I will try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Without further ado, let's get to it. If you're a veteran to the series, let me start off by saying, holy crap, we are so back. Gameplay is very tight, and the story is super expanded upon. The overall experience is very familiar, yet very different, but more on that later. For newcomers to the Warriors franchise, or Musou series, it's basically a really fun hack and slash game where you control a character that can beat the crap out of thousands of troops with super flashy gameplay. The story will either be based off of some popular media like Fire Emblem, One Piece, or even Zelda, or it's based off of history. Dynasty Warriors is based off of The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is a historical novel which is largely based on true events with some fiction sprinkled in. It details the three great dynasties of China known as Shu, Wu, and Wei, and the conflict and struggle towards the unification of China. Now let's talk about Origins and the new things in this game. The first thing I wanted to point out before we get into the meat of everything is that Origins is a return to form after 9 had went open world. Up until 9, the games largely had a much more arcade feel where a lot of the story happened through dialogue mid-battle or in cutscenes prior to or after battles in addition to narration and text. Otherwise, you would go from stage to stage beating thousands of enemy troops, generals, and annihilating or clearing whoever or whatever the objective was. This is largely kept intact with Origins, except you see the story through the eyes of a completely original protagonist, who is a traveling martial artist who lost his memory. You start off fighting in various battles across the land to bring peace to a troubled China while meeting and befriending various characters. Once you hit Chapter 3, you are forced to choose which faction you wish to serve for the remainder of the game, meaning that there is a high chance the generals you befriended from other factions may eventually become your enemies. Once you've made your choice, the story of the Three Kingdoms truly begins. Now, this game is for all intents and purposes a single-player, story-heavy game complete with a lot of cutscenes and voiced dialogue. You're given the option to skip or fast forward through dialogue, but be warned, there is a lot of talking, which can be a good or a bad thing depending on the type of person that you are. Now let's get into the world system. Instead of the open world nature of 9 and stage selecting like older Dynasty Warriors, everything is carried out in the world map where you'll travel across the land to find cities from which to shop weapons and items from, skirmishes that'll help net experience points, side missions that unlock various goodies like equipment or perks, various collectibles like these pyroxene crystals, and of course, major battles and story events that'll progress the story further. Along the way, you'll also find various characters that'll either deepen the relationship between you two through character lore, or they may provide quests for you to tackle. Your character establishes their base at inns in various cities where you can create orbs with various effects like extra damage to airborne enemies or bonus damage through parries. You can also read letters from various NPCs or officers that'll provide items, extra quests, or even character events for you to find out in the world. You can also review and watch the story and cutscenes that you have experienced in your playthrough thus far. Now moving over to gameplay, if you played a Dynasty Warriors game before, especially the last 3 in the series, you more or less understand how the general gameplay works. The first weapon you start off with, which is the sword, plays the closest to older titles where square is your weak attack and can be chained up to 6 times. You can weave in your strong attacks with triangle where, depending on when you press it in the sequence, it can change the attack animation. You can also perform aerial attacks by pressing square in the air, as well as plunging with triangle. By holding R1 and pressing the corresponding face button, you can perform arts at the cost of bravery, which are battle skills which vary between weapon-specific and general use. Some arts are great for damage, while others provide utility, such as crowd control, interrupting an enemy's orange unblockable attack, or flat out countering even a red deadly attack. Similar to 9, you can also evade by pressing R2. You can also perfect evade if you time it right when you're attacked, which also helps recover some bravery. You can parry attacks by doing a perfectly timed block, which allows you to follow up with a counter. As you deal damage to enemies, you'll whittle down their fortitude, which, when depleted, allows you to follow up with an assault for extra damage. As always, you can press circle when you have enough Muso gauge to perform the invincible Muso attack, and when it's completely filled, you can enter Muso Rage, during which your attack and speed is buffed, your Rage gauge is used for arts instead of bravery, and when time runs out, or if you press circle again, you'll do a true Muso attack. On the battlefield, sometimes grand tactics will occur where a specific condition needs to be met in order to trigger a pretty strategic event. They'll range from protecting an officer long enough to deal a deadly blow to the enemy to even defeating a large number of troops to prevent the enemy from crushing your morale. You can also perform tactics of your own once you unlock bodyguards. Depending on the situation, you can sometimes trigger a dramatic tactic where one specific tactic will be extra effective against an enemy. One neat new mechanic is the Eyes of the Sacred Bird, which allows you to see things such as traps, magic, and other various battlefield information. Reminiscent of Dynasty Warriors 4 and the Empire's games, officers can challenge you to duels where you'll fight with another general one-on-one. If you win, you ultimately defeat the general and deal a huge blow to the enemy's morale, while losing does the opposite. But instead of getting hit with a game over, you actually just lose a huge chunk of health. Also, if you happen to game over, the game allows you to recreate the battlefield so you can see what exactly happened over the course of the battle, in addition to being able to restart from a specific checkpoint as opposed to having to restart the entire battle. Now let's back up a bit and talk about weapons and death. As far as I know, there are only 9 weapon types in this game, each of which legitimately plays pretty unique. Sword feels the closest to older Warriors games mechanically, while weapons like gauntlets require you to switch between forms to account for various battle situations, and wheels can deal extra attacks by pressing triangle the moment the wheels come back to you. This makes for a varied and satisfying combat experience between all the weapons. Now, my only gripe with this is it's exactly the same as the other playable characters. Now, when I say playable characters, it means the battle companions that you can sometimes choose to accompany alongside you. Depending on the battle and who you choose, it can change where your starting position is. Mid-battle, once that character's meter has been filled, you're given the option to swap to that character for a small period of time. They are essentially meant to be a souped-up version of your character, where the main thing that's different between the protagonist and themselves are the super OP arts that they get, in addition to the big shockwave they do at the end of their true Muso attack. The battle companions are basically meant to be used as a sort of trump card. That said, their attack animations are the exact same as your character. No differences or no additional EX charge attacks. Now, I understand why they did this. It's most likely to keep the focus on the protagonist and to keep the core gameplay pretty fleshed out. But man, not being able to play as other characters with more unique movesets like the older games kinda really sucks. Not to mention there is zero co-op in this game, so it feels extra bad. Now, for each kill you rack up and for each objective you clear, it turns into experience points towards your weapon's proficiency as well as your character's level. Leveling up your character improves various stats in addition to unlocking additional skills, while raising weapon proficiency unlocks new abilities in your weapons kit. You can gain skill points through various battles in addition to clearing some of the side quests that you get from characters. In fact, since you can change your arts and weapons in the middle of battle, you can literally clear tons of weapon-specific side quests all at once by checking and swapping weapons accordingly. With all this, most things different and newly introduced should be covered. If I missed anything, I'll probably make a follow-up video after having beaten the game in its entirety or post it in the comments. Now, let's get into my thoughts. After spending 20 hours on the game, one thing was definitely made clear to me from Dynasty Warriors Origins. It is a very familiar but very different type of Dynasty Warriors game. A lot of characters have familiar features but have been updated to look not only damn good, but also more realistic. For example, Zhang Jiao of the Yellow Turbans doesn't look like some cheap wizard at some kid's birthday party. He actually looks like a sensible man with an actual cause. Another example is Dong Zhuo. Instead of looking like a dude who is very clearly a villain who is insanely greedy, Origins presents him as a man with a menacing aura who is capable of being a threat to the Han Dynasty. Characters can also visually evolve as time progresses via costume and facial feature changes. Origins does such a good job of fleshing out each character throughout the story that I strongly feel that this is the most alive that Dynasty Warriors has ever felt in its story presentation. Sometimes it just feels like I'm watching an Asian period drama or even watching an RPG games cutscenes. The overall gameplay too is honestly really good. Going too deep into a group of enemies can prove pretty dangerous and at hero difficulty, lethal. Enemies also have pretty easy tells for when they'll attack since they'll usually have some sort of colored windup. You typically have enough time to react to each situation, and if for any reason you find your current difficulty too easy or too hard, you can swap it at any time. As I mentioned before, the weapons feel very unique and carry mechanics respective to each weapon. I also appreciate that you can evade cancel attacks and can parry during certain parts of your attack strings. It keeps the action flowing fast and allows for higher levels of combo creativity and skill expression. Yes, it definitely sucks that there is a lack of co-op, and not being able to actually play as any other characters with unique movesets kind of feels really bad. But overall, this is a really good push in the right direction for Omega Force. They can easily take this and build upon it to make an even more impactful evolution to Dynasty Warriors. If not in an extreme expansion, then maybe in a future sequel. One thing that I'm sure a lot of people might feel is a wasted opportunity is the main protagonist. Now, I personally think that the character looks pretty damn cool. But if we were going to be playing as an original character, they could have very easily have implemented a character creation system like in Empire series or even in Dynasty Warriors 4. Maybe we'll get that in a Origins 2 should they decide to make a similar sequel. Another cool thing that is technically a story spoiler, and I'll give you a quick couple of seconds to decide whether or not you want to hear this, so if you haven't clicked off or skipped already, don't blame me, I gave you enough time. Alright, here goes. Throughout the course of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, there are fated deaths, meaning that there are characters who are meant to actually die, usually as a casualty of war. One example is Sun Jian, as he gets trapped in an enemy's ambush with no relief. Huang Gai gets there a tad too late and Sun Jian gets flattened out by a boulder, forcing his son, Sun Ce, and the rest of their army to retreat. Sun Ce ultimately decides to rally the clan and serve under Yuan Shu for protection, and the story goes on from there. Now, similar to 8, where there were alternate outcomes, you can apparently alter the fates of some heroes. The only thing I'm not certain as of yet is just how much it changes the rest of the story. I restarted the same stage and rushed over to the base that would connect me to where Sun Jian was. There, I was met with a souped up version of Zhang Jiao in phantom form. You literally have to beat this thing, this HP sponge-ass phantom, in order to open the way through. With where I was in the game, I had to put the game at the easiest difficulty in order to have enough time to beat him and move over to Sun Jian. After about 3 tries, I was able to make it to Sun Jian where this cutscene plays out. You ultimately save a badly wounded Sun Jian, the army still retreats, and you get treated to a cutscene of Sun Jian telling Huang Gai in confidence to pretend that he's dead. Wait up, hold on a second. You mean to tell me I restarted the stage to save your ass and you still want to pretend to be dead? Now, to be fair, I haven't gotten far enough into the story in order to see if it has a bearing on anything. I'll have to see what happens on the rest of my playthrough, but I hope to God that it has a bearing on the story. Also, I'd like to point out how very Final Fantasy VII Remake-esque it was for Omega Force to put in a phantom Zhang Jiao to stop me from saving Sun Jian. Especially if this is a recurring thing, it'll feel like how Cloud and the gang are stopped from interfering with fate via the Whispers. And that's about everything I wanted to cover in my hands-on preview with Dynasty Warriors Origins. I feel that Dynasty Warriors Origins is a super solid entry into the series and is a major step in the right direction. It has the foundation to easily be what can be one of the best Dynasty Warriors games in the series and has a lot to build off of. A demo is also available to play, which should give you a pretty good idea of what flow of combat will feel like. While nothing transfers over, by the end, you should be able to tell whether or not you enjoy the game. While I'm not 100% done with Origins, I'm super excited to finish the rest of it and hope that other people are too. Whether you're a newcomer or a veteran to the series, I truly hope you pick this up, try it out, and enjoy the experience much like I have. That's all for me, Cartmasters. As always, stay safe, get mad, get sad, have fun, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!